You're good. All right, let's pray. We've got all kinds of wild and interesting things tonight. Father, that you would bless special in this class, that we'd see the excitement, the danger, the adventure that Christianity was in the first century, and what we can learn from these things, Father. Help us to put things together and organize them in our mind to better understand the gospel and how the church began. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Just so you know, we're going to have a quiz next week. And what you're going to do on your whiteboards right now will be your quiz next week. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up some dates in history, just a year. You fill in the blanks. Let's see how many you can do. All right? There's like 4 dates BC that you have to know. Something significant happened in each of them. See what you do. 400 BC, 356 BC, 162 BC, actually there's 5 of them. Yeah. Then we're going to take a big skip here. 6 BC and 4 BC. See what you can do with those. We'll talk about them when you do it. Trouble is I see you once a week. That gives you plenty of time to forget. So we do some periodic review. I'm big on that stuff. I'd like you to remember these dates, important dates. Help you give enough framework. When things happened in history, what happened when? You can look at your notes if you need to, if that helps you. It's okay. I'm just warning, get you back into it here. Well, let's see what you know. Did it give you all the answers? What's rattling around in your heads? We talked about last week that 400 years era from 400 BC to the birth of Christ. And a couple of very significant things happened. Let's see what I got on some of you. Notes, good. Very good. Yeah? All right. Some of your notebooks have better memory than your brains. Anyway, it's okay. Oh, that's true. Okay, you're gonna do some catch up today. A little bit. Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit.
All right. Here, we're going to do 1 more minute on that, then we'll start calling for people with some answers. We know it's just beginning to happen here. See, this is actually a test. This is my informal. This tells me how much you remember. I'm watching what you're doing here, and I got a good idea where you're at, so I know what I need to do. All right, let's start collecting them. Who can give me an answer for why 400 BC is about that year is important?
The last Old Testament book.
What do we have?
The last Old Testament book.
The last book of the Old Testament is completed. And actually, yeah.
I got one.
Now, that's not an exact date. But Malachi was done prophesying before 400 BC. He's the last of the prophets. And so for 400 years, if you will, there are no prophets in Israel. And so the scriptures do not tell us about those 400 years. And this is where world history comes up, because significant things did happen to the Jews. Actually, I shouldn't say the scriptures don't tell us. Daniel in prophecy told us several things that would happen during those 400 years. But he just gives a prophecy, he doesn't fill it out for it. World history fills out Daniel's prophecy. So, we have a close on the Old Testament, if you will. 356. What happened in 356? I think it's July 20th.
Alexander.
The birthday. Whose birthday?
Alexander.
Alexander the Great. Okay. So, and he was a great what?
Conqueror.
Conqueror.
He was a soldier.
Personal character? Forget it. But anyways, he was a great conqueror. We're going to find a lot of these people. They were great this or great that, but I don't know what they were great persons in character. Alexander the Great, and the way I don't know, he lived just 33 years. So his conquest happened during that period. It gives you an idea when he conquered. It would be Persia, Egypt, and going east all the way to India. Huge amount of land. Of course, that included Jerusalem. We talked about that. All right, remember the Jerusalem got spared because Alexander had seen the high priest in a vision before he left Macedonia. So, now, in 162, something very important to the Jews, and the Jewish way of thinking actually happened in 162. What do you got there?
Septuagint.
Septuagint, that's very good, but I'll give you a date on the Septuagint. Actually, the Septuagint, we're not exactly sure, somewhere between 300 and 200 BC. Just going to write S there for the Septuagint. I don't have space for it here. Anyways, which would be the Bible in Greek, in the Greek language, which is what particularly the Jews used in the diaspora, or the dispersion. If they were not in Israel, they were using a Greek Bible and speaking in Greek. Actually, the apostles quoted from this often. So, this date is the Maccabean Rebellion. Remember Judas Maccabee? Judas the what? The what?
The Hammer.
The Hammer. That's what Maccabee. It's not his last name. He was called Judas the Hammer. And his father, Mattathias, in a little village, I think it was Modian, said, "No, I'm not going to sacrifice to this idol." Killed the man doing the sacrifice, killed the official from the king, fled into the wilderness with his sons, and started a guerrilla warfare rebellion that succeeded in freeing Israel for 120 years. They were self-ruled because of the Maccabean rebellion. Unfortunately, this is what they wanted a Messiah to do. This is what they wanted. They wanted someone to liberate them from the Romans the way that Judas Maccabee had liberated them from Antiochus IV. And of course, do you remember all the things Antiochus outlawed? He's the great enemy of the Jews. You got him there. What do you got?
I got circumcision, Sabbath, feast day scriptures, forced to sacrifice to pagan idols, and that's about what I got.
Circumcision, the Sabbath, all Jewish feasts, having a copy of the scriptures,
and you're forced to.
And then they forced them, forced them to sacrifice to idols. Yeah. So he literally tried to wipe out Judaism. So in Daniel in prophecy, he is a type of the Antichrist. So, and that's a big deal for them, that they won this victory, that they found their freedom, and also with Alexander, that Alexander spared them and left them, freedom of religion. They had to pay tribute to Alexander, but they were really very much self-ruled when he conquered them. So, now we're getting down to In 6 BC, anybody? What's that our best date for?
Christmas.
Birth of Christ. Okay? So we have the birth of Christ. These are days I'm going to keep asking you on all your tests. So that at the end of the semester, you roll out of bed in the morning and go, the Old Testament was finished in 400 BC. Alexander the Great was born in 356 BC. You'll just rattle them right off. Okay? And then this is Herod's death. And we mark that because that's how we really, that's our best marker for when Jesus was born, because Herod tried to kill Jesus. If Herod dies in 4 BC, Jesus had to be born before. That's our thinking. All right, now, you have them in your notes? Quick little bit. All right, we have covered. Is that like this is no. Now we're going to do let's do the AD ones. Okay. And what I'll give you as a test next week is I'm going to give you a piece of paper with those dates, those years, and you fill in the blank what happened. Other times we'll do it a little different, maybe with matching, or I'll actually give you the events and you put in the dates. We'll do it different ways until you cannot forget them. Anyways, hopefully. Here we go. So, big day here. 30 AD, you write in what you got there. Try as many do this as I can do. I don't want to skip any. Big jump here. Those are the dates that we've covered. Definitely, we've covered a few other things, but those are markers for New Testament history.
Okay, whose marker's squeaking so bad?
We did, collectively, you did give me answers for all these. Let's see how you do with these.
What's that, 98?
Yeah, you got your notes. Good. If you're doing this on the internet, you should be doing the same thing. See how well you do?
313.
By the way, everybody turn the camera and say hi to Ramo. He watches all this. Say hi to Ramo. Say hi,
Hi,
Ramo.
Ramo.
Study hard, Ramo. And for Nita, say hi to Nita. Nita, hi, Nita.
Was ist los?
Okay. There's people. Oh, and Debbie and Dave Gatto are watching these regular. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, okay. I don't know who else.
We do.
Some of you study by looking over and listening to the tapes afterwards or the videos. Yes, yes.
Yep.
Then you call me on the carpet for things I said and I can't remember.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Hold accountable. I saw it on YouTube. All right, let's start getting some answers from people here. Put your hand up if you got an answer for 30 AD. What do we got there, Jerry?
Jesus crucified.
Jesus' crucifixion. I'm just going to put a cross there, or maybe I should put 3 crosses. How's that? There we go. Okay. 64 AD.
Fire of
Yes.
Fire of
The
Rome.
Great Fire of
Rome.
Rome. Burned almost 2/3 of the city, went for 6.5 days. Nero, people blamed it on Nero, so Nero blamed it on the Christians. What he did is he arrested some people who were Christians, a handful of them, tortured them until they blamed it on other people. Then he arrested as many as he could and put them to death in many different violence. Remember, some of them he left for dogs to attack. others were hung on crosses, others were burned to death. And though the Roman people thought it was fine him killing the Christians, they thought the way he went about it was excessively cruel and felt sorry for them. I mean, it was intense. So that was Nero. That's 64. And we think in that period of 64 to 67 that both Peter and Paul were put to death by Nero. That's as best as we understand, but it gives a time frame in their lives. So we talk about short and sweet. Jesus is raised from the dead in 30 AD. Peter and Paul are both dead by 67, 37 years later. They did their work and they're gone. They're in heaven. So it gives you an idea, you know, the time frame. 70 AD, very significant thing happened. Raise your hand if you got an answer here for 70
John
AD.
died.
Yes, Dave.
John dies.
No, that's coming later. Yes.
Titus destroys Jerusalem.
Destroys Jerusalem. And when he destroyed Jerusalem, he destroyed the temple. After 70 AD, there has never been Jewish animal sacrifice. So it ended the system of animal sacrifice in 70 AD. So Titus of Rome, actually he went into the siege with his battle with his father Vespasian, but his father didn't stick around for the whole thing. When they finally, destroyed the city, it was Titus who did the work there, was in charge. And the destruction, Jerusalem is destroyed along with the temple. Also, and I didn't mention this, I should have, Jesus prophesied that not one stone would be left standing upon another. It is prophecy, not just that the temple will be destroyed, but leveled. And because when they burned the temple, the inside was painted with gold, they wanted all the gold. So they dismantled it so they could scrape all the gold that had melted on the inside of the crevices of the stones. So it's been leveled. If you go to Jerusalem, you can go to the Temple Mount, the foundation of it, which I've actually seen. It's very impressive. There's a tunnel you can go underneath. You can see the stones that actually hold up. They had to build a Temple Mount because the temple was on a hillside, so they needed something level, so they built this Temple Mount. That's where the Jews often worship today, called the Wailing Wall. How many seen pictures of the Wailing Wall? That's the Temple Mount. But the temple on top of it is gone. In place of it is probably the major landmark in Jerusalem. It's the Dome of the Rock, that big golden dome you see pictures of in Jerusalem. So we know there's going to be another temple because it's Daniel's prophecy in the book of Revelation. And what either has to happen is that Dome of the Rock is destroyed and then the Jews rebuild the temple there, or they build the temple next to the Dome of the Rock. So my Pastor Handel's theory is that some Arab terrorist will send a rocket into Jerusalem and it'll hit the Dome of the Rock.
Oh my goodness.
And the Jews will go, act of God, time to rebuild the temple. But in 70 AD, it's been destroyed, and that's what's left. Okay, now, a few things on this left. Not just the dates, but why they're really significant. 98 is a marker too, then it's about 98. What do we have there? Jay, what do we have? You got it, you gave it to me for the wrong date.
Persecuted church. Persecuted church.
No, the answer you gave me before.
Oh, John died.
John dies around 98 AD. Okay? So, John's death. Now, besides being a great apostle, but at that point, the scriptures are finished. The apostles have written the New Testament. Those books are all done. So we have the New Testament by 98 AD. And that's significant. Now you've got an Old and New Testament complete. So that is a big thing. And we've mentioned this date, 313 AD. Big date in history.
Well, It ends at, it ends.
It ends
the
the-
era of martyrs,
the-
and Constantinople takes over and causes Christianity to be the
State religion.
state religion, what'd he say?
It ends the persecution it was a decision made by the Emperor Constantine in the west, in Licinius in the east. They met together because Licinius was marrying Constantine's half-sister. And at the wedding, while they were celebrating the wedding, the two emperors agreed, we're going to give complete religious freedom to every person in the empire, as long as they don't, do something, to take away someone else's civil rights. So it's called the Edict of Milan. That's how it's recorded in history. The funny thing was, there was no edict. There was no public announcement. But there was an agreement made between the two emperors. And then when Licinius got back in the east, I'm not even sure where his palace was at that point, he made a proclamation based on what him and Constantine had agreed on, and we have that one in writing. We have a record of it. So we know the two emperors made an agreement. It was Constantine's idea. He had at some point, we're not sure if he converted to Christianity or he realized that he better honor the Christian God, even though he still had pagan beliefs. There's two accounts of his conversion. One says that he saw the sign of the cross in the sky and the words, "In this sign conquer." Another version says he had a dream or a vision of it. But we do know he went into a major battle and he told his soldiers with their shields to put the sign of the cross on all their shields. For an outlawed, persecuted, hated religion, Christianity, to put their sign on your shields, obviously God had moved this man in some way. He was depending on the God of the Christians to win that battle, and he won. So, these are big dates in history, and I want you to remember them. And I'll pull one more up because we have talked about it. Okay. Those dates are really kind of a snapshot review of much of what we've done. One more, 325 BC, and I will give you this one. This is the Council of Nicaea. I think I'm spelling Nicaea right.
No, that's the way I got it spelled.
Okay.
You told us this.
Yeah. And at that council, there were a couple issues they dealt with. The most famous one and most important one is a heretic, we call him a heretic today, named
Arrhenius.
I'm trying to spell it. Arian, that's it. Trouble saying, we're not right, I forgot how to say it. Arian, his followers called his belief system was the Arianism, believed that Jesus was the Son of God, but he was not God. And that he was a begotten, created creature, something between God and man, but not co-eternal, not co-equal with God. And it created a huge stir in the empire, and almost near riot conditions in places with the for and against. And at that council, the good and the bad was, I think there was somewhere between 250, different historians give different amounts, somewhere between 250 and 318 bishops from around the empire. And I was trying to think, it's all but 6 of them agreed that Arian was an error. And he was banished. And people who sided with him was banished. By the way, Eusebius, as you just read, was banished. Eusebius was not an Arian, but he thought the other party went too far in the other direction. He had an in-between view, and he got banished for a season for it. It's interesting. But the Arianism is what the basic belief system of the Jehovah's Witnesses today, and they quote Arian. Say, oh, he was a genius, he saw this thing. All right. But the their decision was good. The bad part was Constantine called that church council, and Constantine was in charge of it and ran it. And Constantine was not a bishop, he was a Roman emperor. And it began what we call this bad marriage between church and state. Which, if you go through church history, the worst thing that has happened in church history is not persecution. It's not heresy, per se. It's when church and state become like this. Because state officials start making church decisions. And church officials end up being politicians instead of great Christian leaders. And you end up with Europe, as you end up with many dead state churches as a result of it. And then even in 1517, with the Protestant Reformation, Luther and Calvin and the other Protestants, if your leader was a Protestant, then you were a Protestant. And again, we have a marriage between church and state. And if you go to countries, the state church is a Catholic church or it's a Lutheran church, and it gets state money, they're dead churches. Yeah, there's some believers there. But it destroys Christianity. So, you know, Americans have an idea, it's an American thing, separation of church and state. And we understand it and the value of it. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to Christianity. We'll show you more about that later. So this is an important, the good and the bad that came out of this. And I think I mentioned last week, could you imagine Obama running a meeting when you have a doctrinal issue in your church? Or Hillary. Oh. Oh. By the way, you know, this has helped me to not be so totally depressed over the coming election. I mean, you know, when you have to choose between Hillary and Trump, okay? Obviously, you don't have to cut any corners to rip either of them apart. You can find plenty of faults. I'm going to go into my preferences, but I'm thinking they're not as bad as Nero. We have a whole Roman Empire. And Christianity thrived with Nero on the throne. And Paul writes in his letters, "Pay your taxes to who? Nero? Oh, God forbid, you know? You know. So Christianity can thrive with a hostile government, and with a government that's making even terrible decisions, which our government is really good at doing. If you look at your Bible, compare with governmental decisions in the last 50 years. Yeah.
Daniel 4:17, 4:15 says, we get the government we deserve.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of truth to that. Unfortunately, it collectively shows the wisdom of the American people, which I'm not real thrilled with right now. Okay? Our collective wisdom. Oh, Lord. But, you know, we have missionaries in China, and they have a communist government, and Christianity is spreading in that country quickly. People are hungry for the gospel. When the government, which they dislike, says there is no God, all the people say, "Tell me about God." Okay? It actually, so we may have, you know, and if those bad officials cause us to have perilous times, what do Americans do in perilous times? They turn to the faith of their fathers. And you say, I wish it didn't have to be that way. But church history says it is that way. We'll do that second semester. We'll look at American history. In times of trouble, Americans have turned back to the Bible, and back to God, and back to going to church. And things are rough. So, anyways, just a little perspective, you know.